Welcome everyone to Agile Games with James. I am James and this is Nick Burton. And today we're going to be talking to you about the importance of value over velocity. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick?
Over the past 7 or 8 years, I've been working in Agile environments in the digital and tech space, primarily using the Scrum and Kanban frameworks. And during that time, my role has mainly been that of Scrum Master. However, I've also worn many hats, including product owner, project manager, program manager, director, Agile coach, information architect, and most recently as a mentor through the Dallas chapter of PMI. And in addition to all that, I do have my CSM and PMP certifications. So I do what I do because I enjoy working with teams and helping them leverage Agile values, Agile principles, and the guidelines laid out in subsequent frameworks to help them not only improve how they build things, but also improve the quality of what they build. So helping them become more efficient, more effective, deliver things sooner, create valuable experiences and products for their end users. And along this journey, over the past 7 or 8 years, I've had to do a lot of learning. Most of it hands-on, but there are times occasionally you go to conferences and webinars, and that kind of ties into the topic for today, actually. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was on a webinar, and the moderator towards the end had asked the participants, if you guys could change anything about the Agile Manifesto, update it in any type, any way, what would you do? And one of the participants chimed in with value over velocity. And that really struck a chord with me. And, it's something that even to this day I remember, because back then, all the way through now, I do see a lot of organizations that correlate a team's velocity with how much value they're able to produce. And in reality, those are two very different things. They should never be tied together. Value is something that you provide to your end user. It's a benefit. You're solving a problem. You're improving workflows. You're making things more enjoyable for them. Whereas velocity is strictly a planning tool to be used by the team.
So Nick, how would you help prepare someone and help them understand the differences of a culture that is more value-driven versus a culture that is more velocity-driven in their teams or their organization?
So teams that tend to be focused more on velocity, organizations that really push that mindset, often run into a number of problems. Because you're focusing on output more than outcomes, oftentimes you're forcing teams to commit to unrealistic deadlines. As a result, they can become overstressed, overworked. They often cut corners to meet these unrealistic deadlines, resulting in inferior products, a lot of waste and rework that has to be done after a release goes out or after a product is deployed. In addition, you don't get accurate estimates because the team is afraid of what happens if they do miss their deadline. So up front, they're going to pad everything probably too much, and you're not going to get a true sense of when they can accomplish what they're being asked to do.
Okay.
Whereas on the other hand, when you're focused more on value and the outcome that you're delivering, you tend to have better quality products because you have transparency, you have constant communication and feedback loops from your customers, from your product teams. The teams are more informed, and they are able to make better decisions on what to build and how to build things, which also in turn, it decreases your risk of creating an inferior product, helps you build organic growth, and I think overall just creates a better customer experience and internal experience among the teams and employees.
I think everyone watching would totally agree with you. So what would be the advice you give to people who are saying to this video, like, yeah, so tell me how I can have this conversation to to change things?
Yeah.
What would you tell them? What would the advice, the metrics, or the activities you'd help to provide?
So I think really it's about education, and I think that happens on two main levels. There are two groups that I feel that are the most important to reach out to. You really want to, as someone who's championing any type of Agile, Scrum, whatever process you're trying to get forward, I think it's really important that you educate everybody, but there are two main stakeholder groups I think that are very important that should probably be at the top of the list when you're starting these conversations. The first being product, and the second, your leadership team. So at the product level, you want to start out by just letting them know and educating them what velocity is, how the teams use it. And chances are, that product person will be responsible for a roadmap or a timeline. So you can have the discussions around how the team's velocity will impact that timeline, that roadmap, so that they can make the proper trade-off decisions and prioritize work accordingly. Also, I think it helps give them a better understanding that you are striving to maintain a constant velocity, but people do leave, people join, people get sick, so
There's going to be setbacks, right?
it's not always a sure thing. Every other sprint, every other iteration, you're going to see fluctuations. Again, ideally, you want to get it consistent, but realizing that your roadmap and your timelines need to be flexible and adaptable to the team's velocity over time. And also, I think it's important that you stress the product team continually communicate its visions, its goals, its objectives, and its strategy to the team. If not after every iteration, then maybe every 2 iterations, so that everyone is aware of what's going on, what's being built, what the priorities are, if anything is changing, and again, how the team's velocity will impact that. And a final thing I think that would be helpful for educating the product team on, and it's something that I would guess a lot of product teams do, but there are probably some that don't, is creating a value scale to weight your features, to weight your functionality, to weight all those things in the pipeline, so that as a whole, they can prioritize their items at the product level at a higher level, so that the teams are always focused on building the most important things and not being pushed into building somebody's pet project that delivers nothing to the end user.
Exactly.
Right? And then the second part of this, I guess, would be at the leadership level. Again, starting off, educating them what velocity is, how it's used, and assuring them that the team is using this as a planning metric for them. They could say,
would leadership not be informed of what velocity is? Because I figured while product's interested in velocity to a degree, leadership is really the ones that are looking at the metrics, putting the pressure on, etc. Is that not true?
It is, and I think what happens is that they're aware of velocity and what it is, and then they see it as something that they can grab onto because it's a pretty straightforward metric.
Yeah.
And when you have, using Scrum or Kanban, you have cycle time in Kanban, or your velocity in Scrum. It's something that's really tangible, really easy for them to see, as opposed to like back in the day when everybody wants an hour's estimate. So they need something that's like an equivalent for that. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of low-hanging fruit, but again, it's not the right low-hanging fruit.
I agree. Do you think an organization could take away velocity as a metric for the high leadership so that they are really focusing on value? Yes, you could show them a burn down, just don't put numbers to it.
There are teams, and I'm sure there's teams that do this, and I've had to do it. In general, I just think showing them any type of graph, number, trend around velocity is you're kind of heading down a slippery slope, right? Because now you're setting the expectation that they're going to see this type of metric on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Again, with as you do, as I was saying with the product team, first and foremost, you want to educate them on what velocity is, how the teams use it, why it's a team metric, and it shouldn't be something that they hone in on, and that what they need to be working on is giving the team all the resources they need to succeed, and focusing on letting them commit to dates and let them deliver the value that they're asking for. And also, one area I found that whether they know and choose to ignore it or not, at the leadership level, is really educating them about the cone of uncertainty, right? So when you start any project or any release or working on any functionality, software is new every time you start something. So there's a lot of risk when you first start. So at that point, you want to make sure that if they're asking the teams to commit to a deadline or anything like that, that it's that they need to be aware that it's something that is pretty risky to do, and that they should only be expecting some sort of wide window at the start, right? Not a specific date 6 months out, because even if you're asking, someone to commit to something at any level beyond 6 or 7 weeks, chances are it's going to be about 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Based on a lot of research. So you really need to understand that the timelines and deadlines are flexible. The team can provide windows, but those will change, over time along with your product roadmap. And this goes back to just having constant communication about what's been done, what's in the pipeline, what the team is working on, and that as a rule of thumb for myself, I haven't really got a chance to push this through all the way, but based on what I've seen, your best bet is probably not to hone in on a narrower window for delivery until you have about 80% of the work done. And so, also if you look up code of uncertainty, there's a lot of funny things in images, memes, and just general good information that you can bring with, to your stakeholders and showing them the importance of being flexible with timelines and deadlines.
So there's no taking away the velocity. Like, you're going to have to deal with it, but you should probably not introduce it to leadership.
Right.
But it should be at the team level for you to be able to track yourselves how you're doing.
Right.
And then once you're saying that once you're 80% complete with a release, that's when you actually have a good idea, a more accurate idea in terms of your cone of uncertainty,
right,
that you can give a more accurate estimate at that point.
Sure. And and again, that's like, for things where there's groups of functionality or, an MVP or a lot of things going out at once where you're going to be working on stuff for several months probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, there's probably features that a team knows they can finish within a sprint or two, and 2 to 4 weeks. Those types of things, you don't have. It's not such an urgency of like, when is that going to be due? Because it's it's a small enough piece of work where the team can probably finish it. But this is talking more about in the larger scope of a release that has multiple features, multiple sets of functionality, maybe an MVP where it's a whole new V1.0 product going out to market. Those types of scenarios, I think that 80% rule is probably a little bit more applicable.
Okay.
But in general, velocity is a good indicator for the teams on how they're doing. What you can do, not showing, people on leadership levels actual burn downs or velocity trends. You can use that to kind of start conversation within the team if there are issues to say, hey, we're getting bottlenecked and, we feel we can be more productive, but hey, we're short-staffed with, say, QA, right? Or we need one more engineer. You can use your velocity at the team level to kind of spark that conversation and then go up to leadership and say, hey, we've, based on our current trends, again, you don't have to show them anything, but saying, we found that if we get another person on the team or something, or we get X, we might be more productive, have a smoother workflow. So,
what analytics would you give someone watching to be able to go and be prepared with this conversation with their boss? Okay, it was like we have value and we have velocity. So how would you get them to get to the value? Let's say it's a developer watching,
sure,
and like they're wanting to go have a talk with their leadership. Like, hey, you're measuring velocity, you're trying to work us to death, but you're not focusing on the value because obviously we're not delivering stuff that matters.
Right.
So
again, I think this could be a situation where you loop in your product team or your product owner and you say, okay, let's bring up that, weighted value scale that we've assigned to all the features and the functionality that we're asking the team to deliver. And, by sharing that with leadership, you can say, okay, we're delivering this much value, based on what we're asking the team to deliver. But really you're not showing them any type of velocity, but you're just showing them the metrics around, how they weighted the value of what's being delivered. And if the leadership team says, hey, I want you to build this thing over here, well, then the product team come back and says, we got together, and that's not going to give our customers a lot of value as opposed to this other thing that's weighted a little bit higher, right? So that's why we're having the team do these things.
Yeah.
Does that help answer your question?
A little bit. I'm more interested in like we have value and we have velocity, but are there other analytics that they should bring to the table to be able to help frame that discussion?
As opposed to just like walking in a meeting with nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what would you come prepared with? Like, what do you feel like in having having had this conversation before with people? Like, what would you feel like you would be more prepared with if you walked in?
Do some digging, look up some past projects that have failed, that have provided no value, but for some reason you got a lot of things done that were maybe half-baked. You can put in some metrics around how much time the team spent working, whether they had to stay late, they worked weekends, whatever. You can show them a defect count. Say, hey, by forcing us to do this much work in this amount of time, you really made us cut corners. And now look at our defect backlog. Look at all this, tech debt that we have to pay off now, because of these requests. You can say, what, we can give you 300 points of velocity in a month, but you know what, it could be complete garbage, nothing you could actually use, and the end users could use. So, you can just make that argument right away. It's, you can deliver as much of anything as you want, but is it going to work? Is it going to give your company value in the market? Are customers going to want to use it, or you just build a lot of something that someone with a certain title thought was a fun thing to build, but really does no benefit for anybody?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is, if they're going to go have a meeting with their leadership or their organization, really ask the question, be able to have past projects in hand, and be able to really show a pattern of, you asked us to deliver X, Y, and Z, we delivered X, Y, and Z, and even though we had the velocity that was there, we didn't have the value. We can do stuff, but it's not delivering anything that's of worth.
Right.
So stop trying to, run us rampant and give us things that are actually worthwhile to our customers.
Right.
So you're saying just have the projects in hand to be able to show?
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
And also, again, just making sure that you show them what happens as a result of this, meaning, how many defects did we introduce, or how many defects do we have to go back and redo now, or how many things did we skip or cut corners around that have to go, and instead of building something new and cool, now I have to spend the next 3 months kind of tightening this work up when we could be moving on to something better that would give us a head start in the market.
Yeah. So do you feel like it's also an issue of people trying to, what they're delivering, their deliveries are too large and they should do more vertical slicing to be able to get to the market with reasonable sized chunks? Or do you feel like people are trying to take on too much whenever they're very velocity driven versus value driven?
Well, I think definitely with velocity driven environments, you're going to have, the mindset is, more, not let's reach a number and be consistent and, give that team the cushion they need to actually get things done right and, go home and enjoy their nights and weekends.
In terms of velocity, if it is all about velocity, they could just estimate something as being, a 10 or a 12 as opposed to a 2.
Everything would be 1,000,000 hours and
Yep.
100 points or whatever. Right?
Exactly. And they're just like magicians now.
Yeah.
Those builders.
Well, I think too, I even seen it where, when you tend to be more velocity driven, oftentimes, you get a manager creeping in to say, what's the personal velocity of our team members? And then you really start getting into some dangerous territory because they're feeling that, you do a conversation of, well, Bob delivered, 5 points last sprint, and, Tina delivered 30, so what's wrong with Bob? Yeah. Or you have situations where you're comparing velocities across teams, right? Again, educating stakeholders and leadership, especially, that's not something you do. Each team is kind of like their own unit, their own group. They all function differently, and they're all going to have different velocities, but it has no indication of how much value one team is providing versus the other. It's just, they're estimating their work at different rates or different scales.
So come with stuff in hand. Make sure you start off with, obviously, psychological safety. There's another video on that if you want to, with me and Red Davidson, that's, setting the foundation for these hard conversations. So if you want to go back and watch that, that'd be excellent. If you don't have a foundation of psychological safety, don't just go half-cocked to whoever you're going to have this conversation with and think it's going to be okay. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you know someone that's having this conversation, if you found this video helpful, please share it with them. At the end of the day, we're all humans. We want to be treated like that. Thank you guys for watching, and keep on learning.